Muy buenos días a todos, molt bon dia a tothom, bienvenidos a esta Barcelona New Economy Week. Es el evento híbrido, global y empresarial más singular de la ciudad de Barcelona. Ya sabéis, nuestro objetivo es conectar, impulsar y transformar. Hoy viernes, último día del BNew. En total os habremos ofrecido casi 250 horas de contenido a través de 10 eventos y casi 800 speakers. Thank you all for being here and welcome to day 4 at BNew. Tenemos que dar las gracias a los patrocinadores del evento, los enumeramos, son Servihabitat, Ajuntament de Barcelona, Akbar, Consorci de la Zona Franca, Design Partners, Cave Home, Port de Barcelona, Ministerio de Transportes, Movilidad y Agenda Urbana y ADIF. Y también os recordamos, como cada día, que tenemos un hashtag, es BNew 2021, que podéis utilizar en redes sociales para comentar todo aquello que creáis más interesante de los debates que estamos teniendo. No nos extendemos más, son las 11:01 y vamos a empezar la primera sesión del día. Es sobre los FDIs, nueva inversión o nuevos incentivos. Y es que hablar de incentivos es importante en el momento, obviamente, de atraer inversión, pero también al momento de desarrollarla. Sin embargo, la realidad económica mundial demuestra que estos incentivos tradicionales ya no son suficientes. ¿Cuáles tienen que ser estos nuevos incentivos? ¿A quién van a beneficiar? ¿Cuál es el papel de los ODS, de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenibles, al plantear estos nuevos incentivos? Bueno, pues en esta sesión vamos a tener a 4 panelistas, 2 de ellos los estáis viendo aquí a mi lado, son Ángel García, buen día.
Buen día.
Y Ilham Jalil, buenos días.
Buenos días.
También tenemos vía online a Alexandra Pasternak-Jackson y a Leo Valente, muy buenos días, good morning. Y al moderador de este panel, que va a ser Douglas Van den Berge. Hello, nice to meet you again, Douglas.
Nice to meet you again.
I'm going to tell our audience a little bit about you, Douglas. Douglas es CEO de Next Zones y FDI 4.0, una red global integrada de zonas económicas e industriales, pero también sobre sostenibilidad y Industria 4.0. Es conferenciante, experto sobre FDIs, zonas económicas especiales, estrategias empresariales internacionales e innovación. So, Douglas, whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you. I'm ready, fully ready for everything. Thank you for the introduction. So we can start. Yeah, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this exciting panel session. We've got some exciting speakers. We're going to be talking about FDI 4.0 as sort of a reservoir or an oasis of economic growth, for free zones, but also for countries and cities to grow on. I think FDI 4.0 requires a little explanation. As I was introduced, I'm one of the originators of FDI 4.0. We see this as a new vehicle, a new instrument for countries to attract and cities to attract FDI. It's different. It's cross-border involvement, which capitalizes heavily on the fourth industrial revolution to attract FDI for the benefit of people, planet, and profit. So it's a combination of things. It originates in the Industrial Revolution 4.0. So it involves new players, new sectors, new industries, new subsectors, new value chains. And the form of FDI is also different than what we see. It's sort of a hybrid form of foreign direct investment, like new forms of investment, like strategic partnerships and alliances. And it requires also different elements of a competitive business environment. It focuses much more on talent. It focuses much more on the new economy, on the digitalization of the economy, and also on the requirements of many of the new industries that are evolving. It's also much more focused on collaboration. That's why I mentioned partnerships. And there is an increased focus on sustainability and the sustainable development goals. And finally, it requires IPAs to take a much different approach than previously in terms of attracting FDI. So I think it's important to emphasize these points. Let me briefly introduce the panelists. We have 4 very good speakers, a combination of practitioners, entrepreneurs, and also people that have run free zones or run IPAs. So let me introduce you. First is Ms. Alexandra Pasternak-Jackson. She's from Amchan, Finland. Hello, Alexandra. Welcome on this panel. Secondly, we have Ms. Ilham Khalil from Tanje Med Zones. You are live in the studio there in Barcelona. Please welcome.
Thank you.
And then we have Mr. Angel Garcia. He's from the newly established organization Barcelona and Partners. It's a sort of privatized IPA, a very good concept. He's also a serial entrepreneur as well. So he has his background not only in the in more or less the investment attraction industry, but also understands very much what the tech companies require to establish themselves in a city like Barcelona. And then finally, we have Mr. Leonardo Valente. He's from Life Panel, Argentina. Life Panel is, as far as I understand, an artificial intelligence company. Welcome, everyone, to this panel.
Welcome.
It's going to be an exciting panel. We have about 50 minutes till 10 to 12 here. I'm going to be asking you some questions. Please take about 2 to 3 minutes or 4 minutes to answer them. So we also have some time to answer some of the questions in the audience. Okay, let me start with, let's do the ladies first. Alexandra, please. One of the questions that I have for you is, what are the challenges you face in growing the pool of FDI in the city of Helsinki or the country of Finland? You represent the AmCham Finland, the American Chamber of Commerce in Finland, which represents a large number of foreign multinationals, subsidiaries of multinationals established in Helsinki and the region. Please, Alexandra.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. As the voice of international business, our job is really to make sure that we're creating a competitive business environment in Finland, and that means creating a competitive business environment for FDI. And one of the things that we've found in our country is that FDI really needs to be a mindset. And it hasn't necessarily been that before, that it's not enough to outsource FDI to an IPA, an investment promotion agency, and just call it a day. FDI activities really now have to be ecosystem activities. You need to bring everyone along with you. You need to bring your local multinational CEOs along. You need to bring multiple government agencies along. You need to bring the media and the public sector along, and to coordinate and to bring all of those people in on FDI efforts, on Industry 4.0 efforts. You really need a lot of leadership. Leadership around FDI is something we've worked really intimately with. Actually, that's how Douglas and I have been working together on our FDI vision for Finland, because we believe that if you have a vision, if you know where you're going, then it's easier to work your way backwards. And, there are significant challenges in some areas. For example, in AI, 80% of AI efforts are investment decision-making and efforts are related to talent attraction and are related to talent. So if you're looking at attracting more AI, for example, AI industries into your country or your city, are you going to have enough talent, enough skills? And if you aren't, are you upskilling your existing citizens? Are you attracting skilled labor? And the answer is that companies don't know. Companies don't know if you are. And doing that kind of work can't be done by one investment promotion agency. It's really got to be an ecosystem effort. So I'd say our greatest challenge is making sure that there is a modern FDI mindset where we're really shaping a leadership culture around attracting FDI, making sure that all the right players are pushing in the right direction, and that our government understands how important leadership is in this area, in attracting foreign direct investment and in making sure that we're shaping the kind of environment we want to be in. Douglas, does that answer the question?
Yes, it does, but it also raises some other questions as well. So I'm going to follow up with you as well.
Sure.
So I'm going to stick with the ladies first. Ms. Ilham, you represent the Tanje Med Zone, correct? And as you've just heard from Alexandra, can you tap into that question? Like, she mentioned something that it requires an ecosystem and stakeholder, sort of an ecosystem to attract more FDI. As a free zone, you have the opportunity to actually create that sort of ecosystem. And how can you briefly discuss the growth and achievements of your organization in doing this, and as being Tanje Med as a hub to the region where we are currently located? Thank you.
Well, absolutely. It's very interesting to showcase the experience of Tangemed in terms of attracting FDI. Tangemed has been, from its inception 20 years ago, responding to a very important problematic is to put the Moroccan map into the worldwide trade and economy. And by developing the infrastructure of a port and the zones, our main goal is to tackle into the real problematics of how we can be shortlisted as a destination for foreign direct investment. The main idea was to focus our industrial and economic zones in industrialized in them, and to attract big players in different sectors such as automotive, aeronautics, and textile. So we started with the locomotives, and then afterwards it was only logical for us to prepare the whole ecosystem for them, because the vision was a long-term one. That means that if you attract OEMs, and if you attract tier 1 and 2 and 3, you have to have subcontractors ready for them to help them integrate their activity and be competitive. Of course, the logistic parts is delivered by the port, but we had to work very close with the just-in-time needs of these sectors, and to respond to a very specific question, which is, do we have the skilled workforce? Do we have the skilled engineers to help them integrate and to help them attract the technology also in the zones? So as Tangemed, we worked very close with universities, with training centers, and of course I'm not even talking about the whole incentive packages that the government offer in as a help to implement the first pilots of the activities. But it was our role to create this bridge between the necessities of these companies that will actually trust the whole environment, infrastructure, government, and Tangemed mindset and value proposition. But they will also need to have a very long-term vision with their headquarters if they are still going to be competitive on the long run. So we did witness that in terms of developing different zones. We had a pilot zone which started back in 20 years ago. So we will of course receive all the FDIs that were interested in our value proposition. But for the other zones, we wanted to from the inception, from the master planning, we would think about different districts where we will create the synergy between the operators that will be implemented. And this is the mindset that will also generate other economic zones surrounding the port. And it gives us a very interesting feedback about how this FDI mindset and governance will change by the time of, as per today, also to be able to tackle the whole impact of the pandemic. We were very cautious in terms of our the implementation of our vision for the 5 years to come. But it was also to make sure that this vision is tackling the whole problematics of the operators that are today facing also digitalization, sustainability. And we had to be there with all the certification, with all the governance way of responding to their needs, so they can only focus on their know-how. So for us, Tangemed, it was a long-run learning, and we're still also putting the right tune in to the vision that we are having to still attract the new kind of FDI that are interested in Morocco and the northern region in general, in Tangemed.
Thank you, Ilham. That's very nice. Very nice to hear the history of Tangemed and how it is evolving in collaboration with the industries that it currently has. I'm sure there's going to be a lot to do about robotics and artificial intelligence and digitalization within your zone, especially since you are focused so much on the automotive industry and the suppliers. So I'll have some follow-up questions as well. And that, let me turn to to Mr. Angel Garcia, who runs the new Oasis Barcelona and Partners. What do you see as FDI? Well, as FDI projects have declined, do you see changes in the new forms of FDI, which I emphasized in sort of the
we are missing you,
structure,
Douglas.
the sort of hybrid forms. You're missing me. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? I did hear an echo. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, say again.
Okay, sorry about that. It must be the connection from this end. My apologies. Just one of the questions I have to you, as you see that many FDI sort of greenfield projects have declined, likely throughout the year, do you see companies taking new forms of FDI, like ones I mentioned, strategic partnerships or more hybrid forms of FDI? Do you see that as a form or instrument to internationalize businesses, especially in the tech companies that you are approaching? Is that something you can testify on in terms of what you see in Barcelona?
I'm not sure if I understand everything that you said, unfortunately. I think that you were asking about partnerships and cooperation, I believe. If not, let me know. Yes, first, it's a pleasure to be here and try to share what we are doing at Barcelona and Partners. And I'm happy to listen that some of the words that you have been using, talent, cooperation, new economy, are things that really drive what we are doing at Barcelona and Partners. In fact, this is a new initiative that we just started, taking into account that the world is changing, that the companies that are going to create jobs and are going to grow significantly the next 5 to 10 years are new economic companies, something that we used to call unicorns of these kind of things. And as Alessandra said before, talent is an essential key for these companies. And I believe that in the following years, we're going to see a growing competition among cities about attracting the right talent to your city, because it's going to be the most interesting raw material in order to be able to attract the right companies to your city. That means that cooperation in different scenarios, I mean, universities, public administrations, industry, corporations are essential in order to be able to have this ecosystem where the talent is a key factor. I don't know if I answered your question, because I was not sure if I understand your question, but happy to keep asking it later on.
Yeah, sure. No, it did. Thank you, Angel. You did answer the question. You also mentioned, can everybody hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yes, you did answer my question, and I heard the word ecosystem again, and I think Alexandra mentioned that as well. Mentioned those terminologies as well. I also heard FDI mindset. I think that's something that we discussed, Alexandra, also in the case of Finland. So very exciting to hear that. I'll be coming back to that. Leonardo, you are actually welcome. You are actually representing a company. What is it that you see in terms of changes, in terms of foreign direct investments? Is there a declining appetite for FDI, or is your company, for instance, if it's internationalizing its business, using sort of the new forms of FDI, do you look for partnerships or collaboration with companies in other countries or in other cities that you prefer to work with in developing new technologies? Is that something you witness as well, working within the field of artificial intelligence?
Completely, Douglas. Good morning to everyone there. I think we need first to rethink the concept of 4.0. I mean, we have been talking that 4.0 it's about artificial intelligence or robots or Internet of Things or even blockchains. But anyway, we think it's more than concepts that are way higher than this. I mean, 4.0 right now, it's about decentralization. I mean, I'm talking with you, I'm about 5,000 kilometers far from Barcelona. And when we can talk side by side, it's about connection. We are completely connected. Our companies, our products, our development teams are connected. And it's about access. We can access right now to not only technologies that weren't available previously, but to partnerships and investments and talents worldwide. So what we are seeing here, it's not a decline, but especially in our region in Latin America, we have a new wave of investments, not in the form of typical FDI, but especially in VC investments, in focusing in startups, in their talent, as we previously heard. The record deals that Latin America has been saying, despite the pandemic, we are deals multiplying by 4 or 5, and we are seeing this in many industries, with fintech leading this trend, e-commerce, super applications, prop tech, logistics, all relation to the key technologies that this new 4.0 world offers us, but mainly in the what we think of these ideas: access, connection, and decentralization. And that's why we can be as competitive as previously scenarios where the FDI chose only to be safe in the central places.
Thank you, Leonardo. I like that last thing. So what you actually imply is that competitiveness is going to be less. And it's funny because we're working with a working group internationally on defining what really competitiveness is. The last piece of work, and I think most of us, did the study in sort of did their MBAs or masters in economics. But Harvard economists like Michael Porter, those were sort of the last ones that really wrote something about competitiveness. But what you're saying now, competitiveness today, especially in relation to those technologies, is less location bound. It's less related to a specific location. Is that correct?
Yes, completely. It's about talent. The talent now, it's ubiquitous. So you don't need to be some there. But anyway, while the talent is global, the free zones provide a specific greater place to the talent to be working in. So these attributes of connection and decentralization are highly powered by the free zones. So you don't rely on location, but in any location you have to improve the conditions to these people to be connected to the global economy.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. I'd love to give everyone a round again to asking some questions and clarify some things, but we did get some questions coming in from the audience. At the end of the day, this is a panel session and we want the audience to also tap in. So I think that's important. And I'm just going to ask the question, and please raise your hand for the people which are physically present in Barcelona. Please raise your hand physically. The others can raise their hand digitally or just on screen, whatever you prefer. One of the questions is, do you think that regional IPAs will be a good idea to avoid competition between national IPAs? I think, Angel or Alexandra, maybe you are well positioned to answer this question. Who would like to go first?
Can you say
Angel?
again the question?
Sorry.
I can go ahead. I can go ahead. He was asking about the competition between national and regional IPIs,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
As I said before, I think that the competition is going to be more and more not about countries, but about cities. Since we are talking that location maybe is less relevant, probably before, if you are a tier 1 in the automotive space, you have to be close to the car manufacturer factory, or you want to be, if you're manufacturing specific goods, you have to be close to the place where you are expecting to sell the goods. But the new economy companies are mostly digital, meaning that location is not so relevant. But as the guy from Argentina said, you need to have people in a place that they want to live and they will want to work. Okay, so meaning that I don't think it's going to be no longer a competition among countries. It's going to be a competition among cities, because you have to be able to create in your city, in your space, this ecosystem again, okay, that means that you have the right regulation, the right tax issues or whatever it is, but most important, the right talent. So your ability not only to attract the right people, but also to retain them is going to be extremely important. And sometimes this is not a national thing, this is a city issue.
Thank you, Angel. I think that clarifies a lot. So competition is going to be centered around cities or hubs of metro cities.
Yeah.
Very, very good point. If you look globally, the rise of global cities and global metros has been tremendous. I think one of the key numbers is that a large share of the population is going to be living around cities over the next 25 years or so. Alexandra, you would also like to respond to this question about regional IPAs. You're muted, Alexandra.
Thank you. Sorry,
Yes.
I both agree and also also disagree a little in that, do you think that regional IPAs will be a good idea to avoid competition between national IPAs? And when I look at the trends in the Nordics, I notice the narrative has definitely shifted where more Nordic IPAs are talking about, take a look at the Nordic region, take a look at what we have in common, take a look at, the Nordics, and not just take a look at Sweden or take a look at Finland, that look at the Nordics first. Then I think it does go to regions, cities more specifically, but it really depends on what you're trying to attract. Because, for example, if you're trying to attract a data center or something similar to that, you want it to be fairly sparse. You want it to not be in a city. But I think absolutely correct that, talent is the key that unlocks FDI, guaranteeing talent in the future and availability of talent unlocks FDI. And the only way really to do that is with the cities that, just as Angel said, that attract and retain those workers. But I think from a headquarters perspective, companies look far more at different regions of the world than they necessarily do a specific country.
Thank you, Alexandra. One other question that came in, and this is, I think, particularly for Ms. Ilam from Tanjimet. I hope you can hear me clearly. One of the questions that came in is also, how do you think economic zones should restructure for sustainable investments or investment incentives?
Well, it's a very good question. We, as Tangemed, started to see the necessity of assessing the availability of the whole ecosystem of sustainability surrounding the industrial zones. So we created some kind of task force to actually see what will be the necessity of the companies implemented, each one in its sector. And for them to be sustainable, it's only something, it's a must today, because if they're not sustainable from our zones, they will not be able to still be competitive and to tackle the markets they are addressing. And we had to work on very important updates on infrastructures. That means that we are thinking about world-class factories, we are thinking about having incubators, and we are diversifying the way we offer the infrastructure to our investor, to the FDI, because the classical way before is to make sure that you have a land reserve, that you have available space for them to start their operations as quick as they wish, because sometimes it's really just in time even to be able to attract the market and the business. So as per today, before it was very difficult because of the technicity and because of the upgrades that we had to be done, especially in terms of digital and in terms also of sustainable platforms. But because they need their certifications to be able to serve the markets from our platforms, we had to upgrade our way of responding to their needs, and it was only possible thanks to the engineers and thanks to the trainings that are not only available worldwide because we have more than 35 nationalities of FDI in Tangimet, but because of also the local know-how and the availability also to be disruptive and to adapt to the needs of the global environments. So as per us, it was very important to listen to the needs and to be able to work, as I said, like a moderator of the whole ecosystem.
Thank you, Ilham. Going back to you, Leonardo, and giving you also the floor. What do you think, and also if you look at the Latin American context, what are the challenges for cities or countries that you see in Latin America or in Argentina for sort of attracting, whether we call this new FDI or FDI 4.0 or FDI focused on these new technologies as we've been talking about? What are some of the challenges you see moving forward?
For sure, the key word in this conversation is talent. And for sure, too, Latin America has been working with their talent, and that's why mainly you have talked about regionalization, and there are many funds that have been set up on a regional perspective. So that's a confirmation that what Latin America as a region is working in. But the mainly challenge are about political stability. We are and we have been growing as a region of peace. So there are certain things that are in many regions of the world more difficult to obtain that are satisfied in Latin America. And you need to work too in terms of infrastructure. You know, in technology, there's sometimes that it's funny, but the leading requirements are always already thinking with the people that do gaming with their computers. So you can see in the boys playing with their computers the lag they have when they connect to the internet. When we have a fiber and we have good connections, but we need to lower the latency. We need to improve the bandwidth. So the infrastructure that first to see the boys when they game, that's what the companies need. We need more regional data centers. We more regional implementation from the big players on the cloud ecosystem, and that's important too. But it's happening, and that's very good. And the third thing we need it's more established free trade zones that are focused on technology. They have previously been focused on just on trade, and there are some champions or leaders that are doing this change being possible to do this transition to a new mindset, more focus or more relation with what's happening in the rest of the world. And unfortunately, that's happening in Latin America.
Thank you, Leonardo. I think I like the focus on the emphasis on new trade zones that focus on technology. I think that's a critical one. It's also the one that we're as a team working on, the next zones. So it's important to have that because they can facilitate those investments. Moving back to Alexandra and Angel, I think you both used the words ecosystem that is necessary to attract new FDI, but also FDI mindset. And what exactly, I think for the audience, it's relevant to sort of understand both of the concepts, and I think they're interrelated in a way. And it's also what I hear from Leonardo. FDI mindset is probably one of the most important pillars for attracting new economy-driven FDI. It sort of requires a change in the mindset, especially within governments, particularly. And an innovation ecosystem or a startup ecosystem. We would like to go first to highlight this a little bit better, and obviously emphasizing this from your perspective. Alexandra, would you like to go ahead, and then Angel?
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of similarities between having a growth mindset and having an FDI mindset. About being open and flexible and welcoming to FDI. I think you see trends all over the world. We absolutely see it here in Finland, where there's a disconnect between what is said. Yes, of course we want FDI, and then the actions taken that will actually drive FDI. The messages given to companies or investors who are looking to come to our location, and I think this shift of mindset where and almost against protectionism as well, nationalism, saying our local products are somehow better than the products or the services provided by foreign direct investors. Shifting that mindset to say, FDI really brings in knowledge exchange and capital and talent and so much more in the value chain, and then translating that into concrete actions taken. Because, we often hear, yes, we want more FDI, but then when you speak to business leaders, the actions that are taken to support FDI, they don't correlate. They don't correlate with what's being said. And to the point of the ecosystems and why that's so important, there is no one direct lever. There is no turnkey solution for FDI. FDI is a team effort. So, no matter how wonderful your IPAs are, and I actually think Finland has a very good one, Business Finland, they do a lot of good work. No matter how wonderful they are, they can't do that alone. And when different organizations and also individuals and influencers take a personal responsibility and accountability to say, yes, bring your investments over here, bring your talent over here. We're creating this amazing business environment. You want to get in now. When you bring everyone along, you have so much better accelerated results. But to do that, you really need strong leadership around FDI. You need everyone going in the same direction. So I think that's, for me, that mindset of the leaders taking accountability and pushing everyone along and bringing much more people in on the FDI effort, on the FDI attraction effort, so it doesn't become siloed. And that's why the ecosystems are so important. And that's why having this FDI mindset is really key.
Thanks, Alexandra.
Thank you.
And I can acknowledge, I think the FDI mindset is evolving, and it's not always perfect in many countries. And I also can acknowledge that many countries struggle with having an IPA that's sort of being put responsible. Okay, you guys and girls go and attract FDI and just go out and do it. And then there's the government often say not practicing what they preach. So it's a difficult one. Angel, from your perspective, Barcelona, I think Barcelona has a good FDI mindset.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think so. But I think the mindset, as Alexander just said, is changing and have to change. When we are saying that talent or ecosystem or new economy are the new words, probably the way that you attract companies have to be different. So the mindset have to change. Because when the talent, at the end is a specific talent, and we are not talking about a piece of land, we are talking about people with specific skills or an ecosystem with a specific advantage and disadvantage. What the FDA mindset, I think, that have to evolve to really understand what are the companies out there in the world that might have a very good fit with the talent and with the ecosystem that you have in your specific region. And once you identify those companies, and probably are new economy companies because they are the ones that are really going to grow in the next 5 to 10 years, you have to be really selective and specific in order to attract those specific companies with those specific needs that might fit very well in what you can offer to those companies. So I think that FDIs have to be much more proactive, trying to identify specific companies that have a good fit, even though the marketing, the way that you market your area, your zone, your ecosystem, have to be much more digital, because sometimes we are really targeting specific companies, new economy, really digital global companies. So this mindset at the time to share the assets, the talent, and the way that you approach new companies has to really be different than what traditionally we have been doing. When we are talking about Barcelona, I would say Barcelona is trying to position itself as the city of talent. We have this ability to attract people here, not only to attract, but to retain. But we cannot be a great city for any kind of field, for any kind of company, but we can be a very good city for some specific fields, some specific areas, some of them from the new economy, because we have the right ecosystem and probably the right talent. And even though if now we can try to attract those talent. So probably our mindset have to be really to try to identify those companies that fit very well in those assets that we have in the city, try to get in contact with these companies and explain very well why you, this company, name it, should consider Barcelona as the right place to be. But this is not something that's going to be good for any kind of company. But there are many companies that might have a very good fit. And this is the kind of mindset, trying to be much more proactive rather than reactive sometimes, and trying to let companies that might have very good fit with your assets, let them know that we are here.
Thank you, Angel. So actually what you're emphasizing as one part of the solution is to also show how your location, whether it's a country or a city or a region, is a solution to a specific business case or technology that a company is developing or is looking for.
Right.
Ms. Ilham from Tanjimet, just one of the last questions, and then I want to give you all sort of, because we have about 10 minutes left, to give some more time to give some recommendations from your perspectives or from your organizations. But one to you also as well, Ilham. How will Tanjimet develop into the future to provide these new services for its clients, its tenants that are going to establish on your free zone or special economic zone? And that relates to, for instance, digitalization and sustainability.
The plan to upgrade the service offer of Tanjimet to our ecosystem of operators implemented started 5 years ago already. The main idea was to actually tackle the problematic of putting synergies between the whole government agencies and the ones that are they have a chair in the table, in order to give them incentive and to give them the help they need to be competitive from the industrial and service perspective. But also, since these organizations have also expectations from FDI to have their value added locally, which is quite also a challenge, because when you attract FDI, you have to make sure that the home they choose to implement their investment is also profiting from this, from their know-how and from their ways to see the future of their implementation in our zones. So we put in place a digitalization, I would say, program. It was completely financed by the government and Tanjimet. And the idea was that all the dematerialization of all the processes of raw material come in and the products exported. That means that put in advanced warehouses with the necessary technology to make sure that to tap into the markets that are needed. And of course, it was our job also to make sure that the equilibrium between what we get as a structure, a Tanjimet structure, and as a country from the FDI implemented in our region is really helping in terms of giving them more and more possibilities to profit from the whole value proposition. Of course, there are very long-term value proposition, which is the location, the availability of talent, because in Morocco we have a very young population, very talented, and they talk multi languages, and as I said, if it was not for this, the availability of Tanjimet to tackle all the needs of organization, plus the infrastructure, plus the localization, and on the top of that, the availability of talent, we will not be shortlisted automatically as per today. And luckily, whenever an industrialist, whenever a service company is thinking about implementing their activities in Tangimet, and it's a win-win situation, because once this investment is put in place, well, they look at the ways they develop home and local SMEs to make sure that they go through the whole integration of the supply chain. So whatever they need, they will find it very quickly, either locally or thanks to the connections they have because of the platform. So it was very important for us to keep this value proposition and to keep this mindset under the leadership of Tangimet structure.
We have about 5 minutes left, slightly less. So I want to give everyone sort of the opportunity, starting with Leonardo, the opportunity to highlight what you think are some of the recommendations or advice you can give to other organizations of recent changes you've made in your organization, or recent examples that you've shown that you've seen recently in terms of the new economy, in terms of attracting new forms of FDI, in terms of technology development, things that you can sort of give as just one or two tips of advice to the listeners.
Yes. We have been talking about talent, we have been working about development, but there's another key concept here, and it's about leadership. And we need leaders to champion this change process. I'd like to welcome the D-Factory initiative from the Consortium of Barcelona. This is a new 4.0 ecosystem that's doing things in a way that many free trade zones and many initiatives around the world should imitate. So these leaderships and these continued leaderships, that's a problem we have in our regions when you change the politics and the authorities, and maybe the points of view are not the same. We think this is a very, very important supply to develop the new economy. It's not only about talent, it's not only about infrastructure, but mainly about leadership.
Thank you, Leonardo. Good one. So leadership, we have one. Who wants to go next? It's the Angel. Please go ahead.
Yeah, and relatively new in this space. And to be honest, when you take a look to different investment agencies across the world, across Europe, you always listen the same concepts: business friendly, amazing location, great talent. Almost anyone is claiming that they have the same thing. So I understand that for companies, sometimes it's very difficult to understand who is more accurate. Okay, so my recommendation is that I believe that, coming back to the talent and ecosystem, that investment agencies have to be much more specific, much more selective, trying not to say the same things, but say the specific things that the specific company might be interested in order to take the decision. And again, this is not going to be for all the companies in the world. It's not that we can attract all the companies, any kind of company, to our area, to our zone. But probably there are many, or there are few, I don't know, it depends, that might be very interested to know about, not about the general thing about how business friendly, how amazing regulation, blah, 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 but how our ecosystem, how the people that we have here might be a good fit for you, for your company, for your whatever limited company. I think my recommendation is to be much more selective.
Thank you. Very good one. Very good one, Angel. Being selective, being unique is sort of how we stand out, how we can best stand out and make a mark and impact on companies. Alexandra, quickly, we have 1 minute left. Alexandra, you're still muted. Yeah.
I can only echo the leadership aspect, also the specificity access, all really important. But I also think it's so important to understand that competition is truly global now. You're not just competing if you're a local agency with other cities or regions, or as a country with your neighbors anymore. You're really competing on a much broader scale. So identifying that USP, but is so important, but then also delivering it with unusual partners, because that we found to be really successful, getting a bit of a different crowd involved in that attraction, really working everyone's networks is so important.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, we have to stop here. I'm just getting a note from the organizers as well. It's 11:50. It's close to. Ilham, is there a quick word you would like to highlight here on just one quote where you think, okay, this is going to be very important. This is a tip recommendation that we've learned. Digitalization, is that probably the key word?
Well, absolutely. Digitalization and adaptability. We have to adapt to respond to the real and just-in-time needs of FDIs.
Yeah, very good one. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to this panel. I appreciate that. If there's more questions, you can follow up with us independently. Have a nice day, a wonderful day. Thank you, panelists. I appreciate very much your great input. And let's stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your insights on FDIs. Thank you, Douglas, for sticking to our schedule. Vamos a contar con Douglas en la siguiente sesión en unos 9 minutos aproximadamente. Nos volvemos a encontrar a las 12 en punto con el panel llamado Be Talent.